Hi, this is Richard Kinky Friedman, and you are listening to the podcast Fascination Street.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This week's guest is Hugh Fink. Hugh Fink is a stand-up comedian and an Emmy Award-winning writer for and creator of multiple comedy television shows, including The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, The Showbiz Show with David Spade, Martha and Snoop's Potluck Dinner Party, and Hugh spent 7 years writing for Saturday Night Live. I caught up with Hugh on his recent trip to San Antonio, and he was gracious enough to sit down with me for a chat. In this episode, we chat about his growing up in a very unlikely place for a Jewish family. Then we launch right into how he got into comedy and some of his experiences working and playing in that world. He shares some fun stories from Saturday Night Live and the recent Martha and Snoop show. We end the show talking about a new endeavor where he teaches classes on how to write sketch comedy and also how to specifically write for late night comedy shows. This was recorded on location, so there will be some background noise and some background music. I was able to get most of it out, so it shouldn't be too distracting, but thank you for bearing with me. Special shout out to Hugh and my mutual friend, Stephen Krueger. We do tease him quite a bit, but it was all in good fun. We love you, Stephen. Thanks for making this happen. And this is my conversation with comedy sketch writing Superman, Hugh Fink.
Talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Hugh Fink. How you doing today, Hugh?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Steve.
It is 100% my pleasure. We have a mutual friend. His name is Stephen Krueger. He was the second ever guest of this show. And so I want to thank you for coming on the show where we exclusively talk about Stephen Krueger and the projects he's worked on because he keeps all of that real secret. So tell me everything you know about Stephen Krueger.
Number one is I refuse to call him Stephen. I only call him Krueger. And when I text him or email him, I put his name in caps with an exclamation mark because it reminds me of Bueller. So I just go, Krueger. And he's the type of guy who got very upset with me after several years of friendship that I always misspell his name.
The Krueger part?
Yeah, the KR, is it UEG, HER, EUG? Is it Danish? Is it Scandinavian? What the hell is it? The other thing I can tell you about him, I consider myself in the comedy elite of being fairly cynical and dark. He's darker and more cynical than me.
He is one of the darkest, most cynical people that I've ever had the pleasure of speaking with. But, and everybody who doesn't know this already, stop listening now. It's all a ruse. He's a big sweetheart.
He's a foodie. He loves music. The other thing I'll tell you about Steve Krueger is you want to charm him, take him to the best place in LA for lobster roll.
Really?
Because I did that, and he still thanks me years later. Those lobster rolls were amazing. He still talks about it.
Do you remember where it was?
Yeah. It's a restaurant called Son of a Gun. It's in Hollywood. They own another restaurant called Animal. Animal only sells meat, and Son of a Gun is only seafood.
Interesting.
But the lobster rolls are genius, and Krueger gave him the seal of approval.
I'm going to have to make him take me there when I go. I think the way that I really got into his heart was he's a real beer guy. Like, he likes craft beers and things. And there's a bunch of beers in Texas that you can't get in LA. And so every once in a while I send him some beer, and he's over the moon about it. And most recently I started sending him pickle beer because Dallas and Fort Worth, they have probably like 8 or 9 different breweries that make different pickle beers. Oh, and there's one here in San Antonio. And so I've just been mailing him pickle beer for like the last month or so, and he's blown away by it.
I hope he's listening.
Oh, he'll
be listening. So the other thing to tell you, because like you said, this cannot all be about Krueger. My feelings would be very hurt. This is the only criticism I have of Krueger.
Oh, can't wait.
He likes EDM music, particularly this band who I deliberately say I will not call them by their proper name. It's this guy who did the soundtrack to the movie Uncut Gems, the Adam Sandler movie. Oleonics something or other. But I happened to mention to Krueger that that soundtrack was bullshit. It's one of the worst soundtracks of a major feature I've ever. And Krueger's like, what? I love that guy. That guy's, and I'm like, no. That music's horrible.
He has the worst taste in music. It's absolutely ridiculous. If he leads with music, people won't like him.
Hilarious. That is hilarious. I love it.
All right, so Hugh, we're not going to talk about Stephen Krueger anymore, except to say that he has terrible taste in music, and we might throw that in every once in a while, just for the hell of it. Just pepper that in. I want to talk about where you were born and raised. That helps us kind of understand how people got from where they were to where they are. So if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, in my case, I think it's had a profound influence on who I am and what I do. I was raised in Indiana, and I was raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, Indianapolis is a major city, but I grew up not in the downtown part of it,
okay,
but more in, I guess one could call a suburb. They didn't use those terms, suburb, when I was there, but you could say it's a suburb. And I was in a neighborhood, 100% white, 75% Catholic, 100,000% Republican, mostly conservative. I grew up in a Jewish family. Parents were first generation. Their parents had immigrated. They were civil rights and civil liberties activists. So we were a true minority in our own neighborhood.
Just that story by itself lends itself to a lot of comedy.
If one chooses that route.
Or violence, whichever. So what was it like growing up being that one kid?
Fortunately, this is a good quality of the Hoosiers, and maybe that's true with Texans too, is these group of Hoosiers were very kind-hearted, non-judgmental people. So even though we did stick out, when I say stick out, imagine a street where every home is decked out with Christmas decorations, flashing lights, and we don't.
Everybody's the Griswolds except you.
Except us. And, there's a thing of Jewish Americans who sometimes feel pressure to assimilate that way.
Right.
I learned about that moving to California. You have a lot of Jewish people in Beverly Hills who have Christmas trees up. And they're like, no, we're Jewish. And I thought that was so odd because my family would never do that. They'd feel like that's pretending to be who you're not.
Almost traitorous.
Almost like you're ashamed of who you are.
Right.
More of that attitude. But to answer your question succinctly, I faced no anti-Semitism. People were curious. Every year in school, being the only Jewish kid up until virtually high school, I'd explain Hanukkah, stuff like that.
Did you get tired of it?
No, because for me, anytime I could be on stage was a great thing.
So that started really when you were young?
It started when I was young.
What do you think precipitated that?
A few things. I think I inherited a sense of talent performing and enjoying it from my dad. My dad was a old school courtroom trial lawyer, and he studied acting at Northwestern University.
Oh, really?
He was in Tony Randall's class.
Really?
And Patricia Neal and Charlton Heston.
Oh, wow.
They all were there when he was there. And Northwestern had, at the time, maybe the best acting program in America. My dad could quote Yeats poems and Shakespeare.
Really?
Even into his 90s he could. But he got involved in politics and was passionate and said, I don't want to go the acting route.
Did you say he was a trial lawyer?
He did a lot of courtroom stuff, yeah.
So I feel like part of being a lawyer is presentation and, I don't want to say acting, but being on stage and, making sure you get whatever points you want to get across. So I think that probably helped him a lot.
It helped him a lot. The other thing he obsessed over and he taught all his kids was brevity and that less is more. And so one thing that shaped my sense of humor was he taught me to be really cynical and judgmental about toasts at weddings, bar mitzvahs, eulogies for people who go on too long. It was something he really couldn't tolerate.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was like, God, they're so thoughtless. If they'd only cut their presentation by, 2 minutes.
Then my food wouldn't be cold.
All that. And I wouldn't have been bored.
Yeah, that's the important part.
Yes.
It was the great Kevin Pollak who I heard say it. He got it from somewhere. Less is more and nothing is best. And that applied to acting. Somebody told him that. It was one of the people who was in A Few Good Men with him. He said that if you can be on screen, not say a word, and still steal the scene, then you win. So with this less is more that you got from your dad, well, we'll cover that in a minute. But what did you want to be when you grew up?
I think between being a young kid into my teens, I maybe had fantasies of being a classical virtuoso violinist because I studied seriously and loved violin.
You started the violin when you were very small, right?
Yeah, 5.
Why?
My parents were involved in the Indianapolis Symphony, and they had a friend who was a very accomplished violinist. He was the concertmaster. He was from Vienna, And they used to take me to hear the orchestra. And apparently they wanted me to study piano because that's the normal instrument kids do. And I said, no, I want to play violin. And they were, really, Hugh? 'Cause it's a really hard instrument. At the time, little kids didn't study violin that much. But I loved it. I loved the sound of it.
My dad has been a musician for my entire life and before. And when I was very young, he wanted to, try and influence, well, not try, but he wanted to open the door of music as a possibility for me. So he asked what I wanted to play, and I said a violin. So he bought me a violin, and he bought me, 6 weeks of lessons or something like that. And by the end of that first 6 weeks, I could play, I think it was Darth Vader's theme song. And that was enough. I was done. I quit. And I had that violin until about 10 years ago when I was like, why do I still have this? And then I sold it. So the violin was not for me, but it clearly was for you. I have heard you play violin as part of your acts. Obviously, I know absolutely nothing. Man, you're awesome.
Well, thank you. I'm a good amateur violinist, meaning I've had very good training. I've studied with elite teachers.
Didn't you study with the only person who was teaching a specific method back then?
That's exactly right. The Suzuki method, which now is the preeminent method for children, it came from Japan. So I did study early on in Suzuki method. But then the issue with Suzuki method, Steve, is if you get serious about violin, sometimes it's not a method that can correct your technical problems as a player.
Oh, really?
Yes, so after 8 years of Suzuki, I started studying with a prominent professor of violin at Indiana University, which happens to have one of the world's greatest string faculties, like up there with Juilliard.
How did that happen?
Really interesting. Don't know, because why Bloomington, Indiana? But Joseph Gingold was considered one of the greatest violin teachers of the century, ended up teaching there for years. And by him being there, other amazing violinists joined the faculty.
That's amazing. You really did luck out. So if you start with the Suzuki method and then you try to advance past a certain level, it's a lot more difficult?
It's challenging. Some people, professional musicians, while they appreciate the Suzuki method, gets kids interested in violin and to love it, they won't let their kids play it because they feel like it could send them on a path of teaching them wrong technique, which they then have to correct. On the other hand, there's plenty of world-class violinists who did start with Suzuki.
Right.
So it depends.
I was in restaurants for a good bit of my working career, and one of the things that whenever we would hire waiters or whatever, we would look for somebody who didn't have any waiting experience because they didn't learn to do things the wrong way. And so that sounds kind of like what-ish.
Correct, because let's say you've practiced a bow technique over and over and over and over. Well, if you've done it wrong, that's going to be all the more time it's going to take you to deprogram.
Tell it to my golf swing. So at some point you got into comedy. How did that
Pretty
happen?
early.
Pretty early, like...
As a child.
Really?
Meaning, I grew up at a time when there was civil rights unrest. The Vietnam War was happening. My brothers were both college age but involved in anti-Vietnam stuff.
How many kids?
5 children.
And you're the...
4th of 5.
Okay.
And throwing this out there on this podcast, my youngest sister, who was born in the mid-'60s, has Down syndrome. And that was a big deal to have a Down syndrome sibling. And I think that, the sadness and the challenge of raising her, you could respond different ways to that. But I think humor was something that became a real weapon for me.
For you or for the whole house?
For me.
Just for you?
I would say for me. I would say particularly for me.
Speaking of back then, when it was super rare and, I don't mean to sound like a dick, but almost an embarrassment, that was evident, I think probably most evident to me in the way that Joseph Kennedy treated, what's her name, Rose?
Rose, I believe.
Like people didn't even know she existed.
So to give you an example, Stephen, of how my parents were way ahead of their time, they were advised by experts in the community, meaning physicians, psychologists, and even their rabbi, that they should give up their daughter, like a Rose Kennedy thing.
And put her in a sanatorium?
And they didn't mean that in a cruel way.
Right.
They meant that, and apparently I was a factor in their advice. They said, the energy and time it's going to take you to raise is going to take away from Hugh, and that's going to hurt his life. And my parents didn't buy it. And they ignored all the experts and ended up raising my sister. She ended up graduating from my public high school.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I've done some research. There's not a lot of Down syndrome adults who attended public high school and graduated.
That's really cool.
It's pretty cool.
Wow, hats off to your parents.
It's true.
That couldn't have been easy.
Never easy, and I always tell people that. No, my mom would give lectures to, like, Planned Parenthood or whatever and go, look, we love our daughter, we're proud of her, we accomplished a lot. It's a struggle. And our choice of what we did with our daughter, we would never impose on what someone else...
Key word there was choice.
The key word is choice. That's right.
I love it. That's fantastic. And the rest of your siblings are, like, all doctors?
They're all intellectuals, left of center political, professor of history, professor of early childhood education, and a legal aid attorney.
Oh, no doctors. Your parents must be so proud.
Exactly.
So you got into comedy really young based on situations and I guess your way of dealing with...
My way of seeing the world. I hated, I say hated in a humorous way, the mundane and the obvious. And I think I was taught by my dad to have a sort of suspicion of schmaltzy emotion. That where some people will go, oh, that's so sweet. He'd kind of react and go, you know, that's a very knee-jerk reaction that anybody could say. There's nothing sincere about that. So I think that really guided my humor.
I think it's my daughter that sometimes, like, I'll tell a story that is exactly mundane
Schmaltzy
and stupid and doesn't matter or whatever. And she goes, I'm no better for having heard that story. You could have not told that story and that would have been just as fine as I
think
am right
I
now.
do very well hanging out with your daughter because that's how I approach every day of my life.
Amazing. Real quick, back to your dad, who obviously is such an influence. Both your parents are. Tell me I'm making this up. Did your dad write Jewish music?
He did. He wrote Jewish music and non-Jewish music. His first success, Stephen, was he wrote several songs about animals. Funny, original melodies, very catchy for little kids. A song about a turtle, a song about a polar bear, a song about a rabbit. And he wrote them initially just for us. But someone heard these songs and said, these are brilliant. Like, they're so catchy and witty. He ended up getting a record contract, and some guy from the Kukla, Fran and Ollie TV show ended up spearheading the project. They released it without success. It was called Songs from the Zoo. And my dad wrote the lyrics and the melody, and then they had a professional singer, arranger.
Really?
Yeah.
What was your dad's name?
Irving Fink.
Irving Fink. Is he still around?
He passed away 5 years ago at the age of 95, and he was still practicing law.
A, I'm sorry. And B, 95, that's amazing.
And my mom outlived him to 96, so they both had remarkably rich, wonderful lives. No regrets.
Wow, that is really cool. Congrats.
Thank you.
Hopefully that long lineage lasts.
One would hope that my Krueger-esque cynicism won't lead me to an early death.
Well, it hasn't led you to shitty taste in music, so that's a win.
God bless Krueger.
Yes, God bless Stephen Krueger. You are known in some circles as the smiling assassin. Why is that?
Because you could probably gather, but it's by meeting me here, Steve. I'm an affable
Really thought you were going to say asshole. I'm glad you didn't.
Easygoing. I have a nice warmth to me, smile, but I can be vicious when I'm, in my humor, attacking someone. So I was dubbed the Smiling Assassin.
Did you get that before or after you worked for Saturday Night Live?
Before, long before.
Long before.
Oh, long before. I think even as a kid,
Really?
people would say that. I wasn't an asshole. I was actually, a nice guy, good student, had friends, but they would go, wow, he can be really, not dark, just
Deft.
like roast, kind of like roasting you.
You hear that, Jeff Ross? We're coming after you. What was your parents' reaction when you told them you wanted to go into comedy?
It was very mixed because I was admitted to NYU's acting program. And, of course, my father...
Is that Tisch?
It became Tisch right when I graduated. Tisch gave the money. It used to be called School of the Arts, but now it's Tisch School of the Arts.
Oh, okay.
So, yes. So my dad, who had been, a serious Shakespearean actor, he goes, Hugh, you've never even auditioned to be in plays in high school. Why are you applying to be an actor? Well, of course, this is the time when the stand-up boom hadn't happened yet, so you couldn't tell someone, I want to be a comedian. That wasn't a realistic profession. So somehow I thought, I love performing, and I seem good at it. I'll study acting. So lo and behold, I auditioned for NYU's program, which is prestigious. And I got in, and I did like a Monty Python excerpt.
Really?
Yeah, and I remember I read something from Woody Allen's Without Feathers.
Were they just like, what in
A little
the
bit.
hell?
The guy was the head of the NYU drama department at the time. I remember he said, yeah, you're really different. You're funny.
You're really different.
I think they looked at the from Indiana, plays classical violin, but I studied acting.
Really?
Hated it. And after 6 weeks, I called my dad apologetically and said, Dad, I don't want to study acting. And he, of course, was, yeah, I told you so. So what are you going to do now? Well, they were starting up a dramatic writing program in the School of the Arts, writing for film.
Still at NYU?
Mm-hmm. So I segued into that program.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
It is 2140. You are trapped in an underground bunker, built a century ago to protect mankind from the pandemic on the surface. Now ruled by tyrants and their robot army. You are an outcast, an orphan, a scavenger, blind, afraid, and alone. You are Ace, a survivor, and you will try to escape this place known as Subterra. Subscribe to Subterra at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you download podcasts.
Let's get back into it.
Oh, so you went from, I don't really want to study acting, this sucks, this is not for me. Maybe I'll just write for actors.
Well, I'll write funny stuff.
Right.
'Cause I already
Specifically funny. You wanted to write funny.
Always. Let me tell you, Stephen, about the way I knew I wanted out of acting was NYU's acting program is affiliated with all these famous acting studios in the city, like Stella Adler, Circle in the Square, Lee Strasberg. So the studio I was assigned to.
I interviewed Ed Asner a couple of times.
Did you?
He was in that with them. So, yeah. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Hey guys, I'm breaking in right here to let you know that we did move to a quieter location at this point. It will sound muffled at first, but that's only like a minute or so, so hang in there. Great stories are coming.
So there was a class, probably my third week at NYU, where the teacher said,
Hey everyone, I want you to go around and tell us you can't act. What will you do with your lives? And immediately, it's one of those moments where my dad and I would go, yeah, this is so pretentious. So every kid said stuff like, well, if I couldn't act, I'll be a director. Or if I couldn't act, I'd be a playwright. Saying things that are equally impossible to succeed at.
Right.
So they get to me, and I go, if I couldn't act, I'll be a caterer. There was complete silence. And the teacher goes, Hugh, are you serious? And I go, nope. And some kids laugh. And she goes, I think it's wonderful to have a sense of humor, but we have to learn to be responsible about it.
Oh my
Anytime
God.
someone tells me that you have to be responsible with humor, I'm out. And I thought, I can't put up with 4 years of this bullshit. This is only the third week. So that was it.
I can't say how you would have been as a caterer, but I can say that you have been very successful in the career that you chose.
Much appreciated.
So you have written and currently write for all kinds of comedy programs. You were a staff writer for 7 years for Saturday Night Live.
correct?
I love the way you tell how we can figure out when you were there.
Easy. Will Ferrell. I started and left with Will Ferrell. I've learned to say that as a robot.
I love it. I mean, there's no better way, right? It's not like
Two words.
you can go, well, from that one sketch to that other sketch.
Don't have to do that. All I have to say is Will Ferrell. We started, left exact same day.
So everybody has, like every generation, or especially if they're into comedy, they have their favorite cast of Saturday Night Live. It's probably going to be harder for you than it would be for most people to answer that question. Do you have a favorite cast?
Yes. Other than the colleagues I worked with, my favorite cast was the one that preceded me.
Wait a minute. The cast that preceded you was...
I'm sorry, the cast that was just preceded me, like a few years before I joined.
Okay, because the year before you joined, that show almost ended.
Yeah, I know. You're right. You're right about that. So let's go 4 years before that.
Okay.
So if you could go Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Adam Sandler, David Spade, Chris Farley.
I don't know any of those. Oh, no, wait.
Oh, and let's not, a little guy named Mike Myers.
I know that name.
Yeah.
Oh, he was in those Halloween movies.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Right there, that's my favorite cast.
That is a drop-dead, amazing, hilarious cast. And all of them went on to be successful, and the one that didn't would have if he wasn't murdered.
Correct.
Oh, speaking of which, I'm sure you knew this. Did you know Phil Hartman used to do album covers? He used to draw album covers for people. That is so amazing.
It's amazing.
I wish there was a way to find out which ones. You know?
Someone would know, yeah.
That'd be such an amazing collection to have.
True.
Because they were art. They're gorgeous. Anyway, tell me about how you found Saturday Night Live or how Saturday Night Live found you.
Really, David Spade gets the credit. David and I were friends in L.A. through stand-up. We had a similar sensibility, certainly about pop culture and making fun of celebrities.
Now, he is known for being a cynical, pardon, I hate to call it, but he's known as an assassin.
Absolutely.
He cuts quick and he cuts deep.
That's right. So when he got the show as a writer-performer and started having success, he asked if I would fax him jokes for Hollywood Minute, his brilliant segment.
I'm sorry, did you say fax?
Fax.
All right, kids, what a fax machine is. Wow.
So I got some stuff on the air. I'd write some mean Hollywood jokes.
So what was the first, I don't know if you can remember the first one you got on the air, but what was the feeling when you saw it and you went, holy shit, that's mine?
Oh, it was euphoric. I also remember getting a joke on, Dennis Miller had that great HBO talk show, and I got a joke on, he did a cold open where before the actual talk show began, he'd face the camera and say a joke about something that happened in the news that week, and my joke got picked to open the show.
And so was that just, you just blindly sent them in?
Blindly sent it in. I had connections, and the joke was, I can tell you, it was rapper Tupac Shakur was shot today. He's in critical condition, but doctors have upgraded his condition to fresh, which at the time seemed so bold, because that was like the hip rapper term. Fresh.
Wow, that is so funny.
Could you see Dennis Miller going, rapper Tupac Shakur assassinated, critical condition, though doctors have upgraded his condition to fresh.
That is a pretty good Dennis Miller.
They invited me to the taping of the show so I could hear him do it, and Dennis was like, hey, loved your joke, man. Keep it coming.
Nice. That is very cool. Did you keep them coming?
I believe I did, but I was sort of in the midst of my stand-up career, and, I would send stuff in.
Back to stand-up real quick. How long did it take you of just being a stand-up before you got to the point where you could pay your bills?
It took me about 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
What were you doing in the meantime? Were you a caterer?
I was not. I was working for a firm in L.A. that still exists, Friedman, Kinzelberg, and Broder.
What do they do? What kind of firm?
CPAs for entertainers. I mean, A-list.
I'm going to shoot myself in the face. That sounds like the dullest job.
Very dull. Their clients were everyone from Jack Lemmon, Henry Mancini, Stephen Wright, Morgan Fairchild, the composer Bill Conti.
Really?
People who made a lot of money. And their job was to invest those people's money, to pay their bills, to pay their taxes. And I know nothing about accounting, of course. But it was a genius job for me because I was the gopher. They would just send me, here's a check for $100,000. You need to drop this off to Bill Conti's house. Just that kind of stuff.
That is so dope. So, did you make any connections through that? It's not like you could drop jokes off at Bill's house.
Correct. But what I did do was succeed enough that I ended up working with a few people who were clients of that firm when I was just the mail boy.
Did you tell them that?
I did. Martin Mull, one of my heroes.
Oh my gosh, Martin Mull. He paints.
His paint sells for a lot of money.
He's hilarious, and he paints.
He's an intellectual. He's a great musician. Loved Martin Mull.
That guy's amazing. So, Saturday Night Live, you're there for 7 years. You came in and left with Will Ferrell. In that 7 years, you wrote more monologues for hosts than anybody else, right?
Correct.
Do you still hold the record? Do you know?
The show's not big on records, and I don't know, but I'd wager to guess that I hold the record.
What is your favorite monologue? And don't say the Britney Spears one, because even though that's hilarious,
it's a great one.
That is a really, really funny one. What's the favorite one that you wrote? Or
one of my first was one of my favorites. David Schwimmer hosted.
Okay.
And he came out and he said, hey, I'm really nervous to be here, and it's the time where you just wish you had some friends to help you. Now, this is what
Did the band play it?
No. Jennifer Aniston and Lisa Kudrow stood up from the audience and said, we'll be your friends, David. That beat is deliberately sweet and saccharine and schmaltzy because the crowd thinks it's going to be, oh. So they go on stage and join him and start talking. Then Gary Coleman stands up from the audience. I'll be your friend, David.
I love Gary Coleman.
Then I had Greg from the Brady Bunch. We flew all these people in. They wanted to be in this monologue. And it ended up JJ Jimmy Walker came out. And
who people don't know, but that guy, he was a huge comedy guy at the very beginning, too. I think him and Letterman came up together.
That's right. And I revealed a huge gospel choir, and they sang the theme from Good Times.
How expensive was all that?
Extremely. They had to fly in all these people first class, and yeah, it was amazing. So that was one of my favorites.
Whoa. I mean, I have never thought about the budget, but I guess even those monologues, especially if you're bringing all these people, they're not just going to fly across the country for free.
You know, you have to put them up at the Four Seasons, and it's quite expensive.
First class.
Totally.
Was there ever any sketch or idea that got turned down specifically because it was too expensive?
Never.
Really?
I can't recall. That's one thing about SNL and Lauren that's amazing. I never was denied something because the cost. Like, I wrote stuff that was expensive. One of my favorite sketches during my tenure was the British Parliament sketch, like C-SPAN's coverage of the House of Parliament. So they had to construct that room where the British Parliament meets, and I had like 40 extras playing members of Parliament.
And extras get paid.
There you go.
Wow.
I was told that the set itself was expensive.
How does that feel to be able to spend that much money with
Love
ink?
it.
Like, you just write
So
it down.
empowering
And boom.
and sort of like, well, comedy matters. When you have an idea that's good and Lorne Michaels believes in it, they will spare no expense.
Clearly. Now, there are some sketches that stick out with everybody. There's sketches that go viral. The Cowbell Sketch. By the way, I got to interview one of the people portrayed in that sketch. Horatio Sands played Joe Bouchard, which is the bass player for Blue Oyster Cult, and I got to interview him last year. In last December, I did all 4 of my shows were, it was a themed kind of a thing. Well, I've never done a theme before, but all 4 of my shows were multi-platinum selling recording artists from the 70s. So I had B.J. Thomas.
Love B.J. Thomas.
Everybody loves B.J. Thomas. I had Herb Alpert,
Oh my gosh, a legend.
a legend. And I had Joe Bouchard, founding bass player of Blue Oyster Cult. And I had Thomas McClary, the founder of the Commodores, right?
Those are heavy hitters right there.
It was amazing. It was an amazing.
All musicians I really respect.
They're so great.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the most viral sketch that you wrote or had a hand in writing? All of the listeners, what could they point to and go, oh shit, that's him?
Couple things. The one that's emerged lately is my Stevie Nicks Fajita Roundup, which is Stevie Nicks portrayed by Lucy Lawless, living in Sedona, Arizona, with her own cheap Mexican restaurant called Fajita Roundup. Apparently, there's a whole cult following to this sketch, Stephen. It made a list of like top 50 SNL sketches in history and some article recently. And people started writing the Chamber of Commerce in Sedona, lobbying to make Fajita Roundup one of the best restaurants in Sedona, even though it doesn't exist. I've had younger people contact me saying, you wrote Fajita Roundup. So I'm quite proud of this.
What made you do that? Lucy Lawless isn't even from America.
I was desperate for ideas with her, and I said, Lucy, do you do any impressions of celebrities? She said she did a good Stevie Nicks. So I thought, holy fuck, Stevie Nicks isn't even relevant, really. So I decided, I got an idea. What if I have her running a cheap Mexican restaurant in Arizona? How's that for? So the premise is very simple. If you watch the sketch, you can find it online. I took Fleetwood Mac songs and changed the lyrics to all pertain to Mexican food.
Again, that sounds expensive.
No, well, paying for the rights to the songs, I suppose, but didn't stop.
Yeah, I don't care.
No.
I know some people have talked about it, but walk us through a week. I know you don't. It's not like you come to work on Saturday morning and then boom, Saturday night.
Monday afternoon, you show up to work.
So Sunday you're off?
Sunday you're off. Monday afternoon, you show up. There's a meeting around 6 o'clock with the entire writing staff and the guest host that week in Lorne Michaels' office. And people are asked to loosely run ideas by the host. Now, what outsiders don't realize is this is all a ruse, because most of the ideas the writers are pitching at that meeting are fake. They don't even know what they're going to write.
Well, how could they? They just found out who the guest is. Oh,
Well, no, it's booked ahead.
Okay.
No, it's booked ahead. But
So they just have to say something so they don't get in
they're
trouble.
appeasing the host to not get in trouble.
Okay.
So the host has this notion of like, wow, they've all prepared stuff, whereas the fact is they've not prepared. So that meeting happens. And then Tuesday is the most important day, because Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, if you pull an all-nighter, you're writing your sketches to submit. Then Wednesday afternoon is a incredibly tense, long table read where all the cast and guest hosts read every single sketch out loud.
Jesus.
And it's done like a performance. There's sound effects,
Really?
music. Oh, yeah, it's gotten very complicated,
Like it's dressed. Well, not dressed, but
but it's heavy duty. And then that night, Wednesday night, Lorne Michaels decides with the guest hosts what sketches are going to advance to potentially being on the show Saturday.
So the guest host gets a say in that?
They get a say. Depending on who they are, they may get very little say or a lot of say.
Right, that makes
Alec
sense.
Baldwin, he has a lot of say.
Yeah, Tom Hanks, he gets a lot of
Correct. Thursday and Friday.
say. Terry Mulligan, not so much.
Not so much. Thursday and Friday are rehearsal days for the sketches that have been picked. So from the moment Wednesday night the sketches are picked, all the sets start being built, designed, the graphics, everything goes into
They have to
Wednesday
build
night.
them that fast?
That fast.
There should be an Emmy for those dudes.
Well, they have gotten
and
Emmys.
ladies. Oh,
Yes,
oh
they're
okay,
amazing.
good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Hey, then why does it take 2 years to build my house?
There you go. And then Saturday morning, starting around 10 a.m., is the first time that it's like a rehearsal where people are in full makeup, wardrobe, in front of the camera,
At 10 o'clock in the morning?
starting at 10.
10 o'clock in the morning
It's pretty early.
is notoriously a hilarious time of... Oh, no
Yeah,
way.
but there's no audience. It's okay. But
Thank God.
Warren's watching everything from his office, giving notes.
On screens and things?
Exactly.
Okay.
Then there's the dress rehearsal at 8 o'clock Saturday night, which is everything as if it's the real show.
So they do it at 10, they do
With
it
a different
again at
audience.
8. Oh, there's an audience at 10 and an
There's a
audience at 8?
complete- It's really fun to go to the dress rehearsal because you see stuff that ends up getting cut at the last minute.
Oh, yeah. You'll see stuff that nobody else will ever see.
That's right.
Plus, I'm sure you get to see mistakes.
Of course.
Okay, so let's say your sketch doesn't get picked. You don't have a sketch this week. Do you go to the rehearsals and the dress rehearsals and all that stuff?
You do, but it's so depressing. Oh, no, you don't have to go to the rehearsals on Saturday morning. No. You can show up in the afternoon. Sometimes with the cold open, if there's news happening, they make the entire writing staff come in to pitch jokes and help out writing the cold open.
Like if world events had
Correct.
whatever. Okay. Wow. I think Chevy Chase hosted while you were there.
You did.
Everybody has heard that that guy is a total fucking asshole.
Yep. And
Yes,
not only
everybody
that,
has
Steve,
heard that.
And they've heard that. Not only that, it's true. And I have the honor. I was a writer on the Chevy Chase roast of Comedy Central. That was the most brutal roast in history.
Oh, did
He
you
walked
love
out.
it?
He threatened to walk out in the middle of it. They had to beg him to stay. Because here's the deal. He couldn't get any friends to be on the dais because he doesn't apparently have them. And Senator Al Franken crucified him worse than I've ever seen someone roasted because Franken really doesn't care for him. And Franken's incredibly witty.
He was a writer on Saturday Night Live for a while, right?
Yes, he was. And he's brilliant. But he went after Chevy so hard, and he was the second person on the road. So a lot of people couldn't even follow him.
They were just like, holy shit.
Seriously.
How could I top that?
That's right.
How could I even follow that?
That's right. But
And so
I wrote Lorraine
so Chevy
Newman.
cried.
Chevy was mad. Lorraine Newman was one of the few colleagues of Chevy's who agreed to be on the road. She's a sweetheart. And I got assigned to work with her. She loved what I wrote her. I wrote her this thing where she said that she found an old diary of Chevy's in 30 Rock once he quit the show. And she saved the diary. She was going to read excerpts from it. So one of the jokes I had was she goes, May 19th, 1977. It breaks my heart, but I've decided to leave SNL to move to LA to pursue the dream I've had since I was a kid. To be in shitty movies and host the worst talk show in network history.
You are an assassin. And look at that smile.
There's the smile.
An assassin.
You guys can see me now.
Transitioning a little bit, you have, I guess, I would say it's a rare. You had the rare, I don't know if I'd say fortune, but you had the rare opportunity to actually speak with Orenthal James Simpson on the phone.
It was a rare opportunity. I was just telling my daughter about that. She was blown away.
So she didn't know?
She didn't know about me talking to OJ and that I'm still angry at Comedy Central.
So tell that
Turning
story.
down the opportunity. Here's the story. I created the Showbiz Show with David Spade. It's way ahead of its time.
Way ahead.
Very funny, irreverent show, making fun of Hollywood. After OJ was acquitted, this is several years later, he's not in jail, he's acquitted. I had this idea, along with another writer of the show, what if we got OJ to come on the show and be our Andy Rooney, if you will? Just comment on bland, mundane stuff without ever mentioning the murders or anything. This is what my first joke was.
And he would play it straight.
He'd play it completely straight to camera. So it'd be like, and now a minute with OJ Simpson. And he'd come out and go, why is it every time I go to the movie theater, and I go to the snack bar and order popcorn, they ask me, for 50 cents more, we can upgrade you to the large. I tell them, if I want the large, I'll tell you I want the large. Just like horrible, mundane observations like that. So I was very smart. I called his lawyer at the time, not the one who got him off.
Yale?
Yale Galantner, very good. I called Yale. And Yale was, he was intrigued. I think he appreciated this is where my dad's lawyerly sense, really, because Yale's like, yeah, that's not a good move. I said, Yale, I disagree. I said, if OJ goes on Comedy Central to this young, hip audience and is funny, that scores you huge PR points.
100%.
And Yale's like, so OJ goes, let me talk to OJ. Now, of course, I assumed that was the end of it. A few weeks later, I'm at my offices for Showbiz Show, and my assistant comes running in the room and goes, Hugh, OJ Simpson's on the phone calling for you.
Did you believe it? You thought it was a prank?
I did believe it because very few people knew.
Oh, okay, that you had even
correct.
reached out.
And I talked to him for probably 10 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. And he was friendly, egocentric, as you'd expect. He had to go, he goes, you know, I'm very funny. I was on Saturday Night Live in the 70s, and I got big laughs. I'm like, you know, I heard that you were. And
I heard that you were.
When I pitched him the joke, of course, it was weird to be pitching him. I said, OJ, the idea is that you'll come on and just comment on really mundane stuff. And he said, okay. Like, he didn't really focus on the idea, but he did say, so, you know, I need to get paid for this. The money has to be sent to Florida. That was his big concern. Because that way the court couldn't take it away because he had lost his civil lawsuit.
In California.
So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sure we can pay you. So I thought I had just made one of the greatest
like
moves.
the biggest score ever.
So I tell this to Comedy Central, and they go, yeah, we don't like that idea. Like, you got to be kidding me. Do you understand
what comedy is?
International. We'll get so much media attention for this show, for this network. No.
That would have blown the show.
It would have
that was
changed my
before
career.
viral videos.
It was before viral videos. We would have had millions of people watching.
Across the world.
Absolutely.
Oh, my gosh. When that happened, did it, like, flick a switch in your head that was like, fuck these assholes, I'm not going to stay here very long?
No, but it made me go, fuck corporate television, Viacom. Like, they don't even understand. They're in the business of making money.
Not
Those
comedy.
morons. This will make them money. You take this stupid moral high ground. Like, how courageous is it to go, we're not going to have OJ on? Like, that's not courageous.
Yeah, you just had him on every day for however long the trial was.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I really wish that would have happened.
I do too. It truly would have changed a lot of things.
Probably would have kept that show on longer for sure.
No doubt.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Erica.
And I'm Cassandra.
And we're the hosts of Trashy Trashy.
We're a podcast filled with trashy news stories and garbage people.
Did you leave the scene of an accident to go tanning?
Do you refer to wearing the strap down on your Crocs as sports mode?
Have you ordered Domino's online before they even open in the morning?
Are you switching the same AAA batteries from your TV remote to your vibrator instead of just buying more batteries?
Or are you normal?
Check us out wherever you download podcasts.
Let's get back into it.
Now, you sort of got David Spade into a little bit of hot water with Eddie Murphy. Can you tell a little bit of that backstory and then sort of what the reaction was?
At the time, I didn't think I'd be getting him into hot water. It was
because it's a comedy show?
It was the comedy show, and it was the Christmas version of Hollywood Minute. So it was the year-end Hollywood Minute. And I will say I watched it recently.
I watched it yesterday.
Man, those jokes were pretty darn
They were hilarious, and one of the things that I wanted to mention, which is kind of why I brought it up, is because that's not even the most fucked up thing you said
by
about
far.
somebody.
Well, the joke that I loved, that I had a personal vendetta, was, remember the joke about George and Alana Hamilton have a new talk show debuting. It's for the 6 people who don't watch Mike and Maddie.
Yes.
I used to work on Mike and Maddie.
Aha!
So that was my joke, skewering them.
Good for
They
you.
were not happy with that either. That one also had the joke, Stephen, about Tony Randall just got married to actress Heather Harlan.
Mm-hmm.
He's 84 and she's 30. The friends don't expect the marriage to last because he's gay.
But from San Antonio, the biggest thing that stood out to me was the Selena.
Oh, that was hilarious.
That was hilarious, but San Antonio almost shut down when that happened, when Selena was murdered.
Well, so back to what you said is, yeah, the Eddie Murphy joke was just another joke of Hollywood Minute.
And it was just barely there. It was so fast. It was a blip.
if you notice, the audience did want to go like, ooh.
And there was a lot of truth in that,
There was
too,
a lot of
at the
truth in
time. I mean,
But I think
kind of still.
The reaction that Eddie had was unpredictable.
So the joke was they showed a picture of
Vampires in Brooklyn,
right,
which had just come out and bombed.
So they showed a picture of Eddie Murphy.
And David said, look, kids, a falling star.
Which is hilarious, and the same biting, cynical sense of humor that I think Eddie would have enjoyed back in his day.
Correct.
In the
There was
70s
complete
and 80s.
hypocrisy
It
for
was.
him to take offense to it.
Absolutely. Even after Delirious and Raw, he would have said that himself.
His argument was SNL has no right to make fun of him because he put the show on the map. Which, first of all, that's not true. And secondly, he was a star from Saturday Night Live, but when do former cast members become immune from being made fun of? Never.
Right. When do you become bulletproof?
Exactly.
The whole point of the show is that nobody is. They make fun of Lauren all the time, and he is the damn show. So then what happened?
What happened is, I think it was by Monday or Tuesday of that week.
What day did that show come on? Saturday? Friday?
Saturday. Very good. So I'm there with Spade working on the show, and we'd already been told Eddie had called the reception office at least once or twice, and Spade was like, God damn it, Fink. It's bad. Well, while we're there, they go, Eddie's on the phone, David. He says he's going to come down. He's in New York. He says if you don't get on the phone, he's coming to 30 Rock. So was David afraid that Eddie Murphy was literally going to beat him up? I think he was a little scared.
How rich would that have made him?
It would have been rich. But David, not confrontational that way.
Right. He's a very small person.
And I didn't hear it, but apparently Eddie screamed at him on the phone. Screamed. And David was shaken by it.
Have they made up, as far as you know?
Eventually. Years later, though.
Wait a minute. Eddie Murphy said some crazy shit about
Mr.
Bill
T.
Cosby.
Of course he does.
And when he said shit about Bill Cosby was untouchable at that time.
That's right.
Wow. What a hypocrite. I want to move on to Tracy Morgan. When Tracy Morgan got there, word on the street is that he was kind of quiet and sort of kept himself and didn't really...
That's all true.
He wasn't like a real outgoing...
He'd never worked among white people that much.
Really?
Yeah.
And then you decided that you were going to sort of, not necessarily take him under your wing, but make it your sort of responsibility to write stuff for him, because nobody's writing stuff for him because they didn't know who he was.
I love working with stuff in the world of Black America, things that related to Black people that I found funny, that they found funny, and I felt I always had that ability.
Do you think that stems from how you grew up as a super minority in your area? Yeah,
I absolutely do.
Well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be a terrible, terrible thing for me to do, but did you feel like you needed to write for him because he got you pregnant?
Tracy was definitely a project then because he was super talented, but very unsure of himself. Mm-hmm. And as an actor, he was inconsistent. Like sometimes he'd give amazing performances at dress rehearsal. Other times he'd fall flat and he'd apologize to me. But he hadn't quite figured out how to make it work all the time. It took him several years.
Now, you wrote a character for him. The character changed after you wrote it.
That's right.
That was, don't say it. Damn it. That bird is a liar.
Brian Fellows.
So,
which we first did, where he was a guy who was a sort of effeminate black man who seemed to know sports, but really didn't. And that's, I think, the first Brian Fellows. Then Tim Herlihy, who's a great writer, said, I got a different idea for Brian Fellows. I said, fine. And his idea was to make it about a talk show about animals.
Right. That bird is a liar.
Exactly.
And that sketch took off. So I think there was only one sketch where he was a sports guy,
correct,
right? Did it not go over, or why did...
I mean, it went over. It was certainly not memorable. It didn't bomb either. I think it was just sort of like, that was weird.
Which is exactly what you want.
Exactly.
So when Tim said, hey, can I just take that character? Like, how does that work? Is there any ownership, or...
Yes, but it's sort of like it's an agreed-to handshake sort of thing. It was respectful of Tim to ask me, because some SNL writers wouldn't even ask. They would just do it. But he asked. And he was a more senior writer than I was. So I felt like I'd be a dick to say no.
But also, it was, like you said, it was very cool of him to ask.
It was.
Because apparently he didn't have to.
He did not have to. It was the right thing to do.
That's nice. This is a crazy question. There's no residuals for Saturday Night Live writers, is there?
On the contrary.
Really?
I got them before I came here to Texas.
Oh, that is amazing.
Oh, no, I still get them.
So, is that just based on whenever they show repeats?
Correct.
That's really cool. I like that. And during COVID, they were showing the shit out of some repeats.
That's right. I get big residuals for the best of Chris Farley, because I wrote the last sketch Farley ever did.
Right.
El Nino.
So whenever, because they played that sometimes, the best of, but then also they sold it on DVDs and stuff like that.
Right.
So you got some taste on that too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Oh, that's good to hear. I thought it was just like you got your salary and that was it forever. Very cool. So I'm assuming the actors also?
Of course.
Oh, that's dope. That's really good to hear.
They get it through SAG-AFTRA.
Sure.
And I get it through the Writers Guild.
Nice. How did you meet Stephen Krueger? That guy who has terrible taste in
We
music?
worked on an abominable show, Betty White's Off Their Rockers.
You and he both worked on that?
He lasted longer than me.
Stephen Krueger does not talk about whatever he works on.
I know he doesn't.
I had no idea he worked on that.
Yeah, he was good at coming up with pranks, too. But, yeah, that show was miserable, and we totally commiserated and bonded by working on that show.
So that's how y'all met?
That was how we met. The show was a Belgian show initially, so the guy from Belgium flew over here to help NBC launch it. But I created this whole backstory that his parents were Nazi guards in Buchenwald, and he was anti-Semitic. We'd spend hours mocking this guy. Yeah, and Krueger, of course, bought right into that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love a good prank. It's good to know how you guys met. Transitioning wildly, why did you leave Saturday Night Live?
The cast was changing. I was frustrated because I'm a funny performer and I wanted more camera time as a performer, but wasn't getting it. And so I felt like I kind of want to do my own thing. I've learned so much from Lorne Michaels about how to produce, not just write. I want to create something. So that was sort of why I left.
Gotcha. Are you still on good terms with Lorne?
I am. Well, I went back 2 years ago as a guest writer.
Oh, really?
It was so nice of him to have me
Why?
back.
Was it
More
because
like
of the host?
No, it was more like it'd be cool to have a senior writer come back and mix it up with
the kids. Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you remember what episode? Or
Sure. Sandra Oh and the guy from Game of Thrones, Kit.
Yeah, Kit, whatever.
Harrington.
Yeah, Harrington. There you go. Yeah. How cool is that?
It was really cool.
Wait. Oh, so it was two shows.
Two shows.
Oh, that's super dope. So it was a few years ago with Sandra Oh when she was doing Killing Eve?
Correct.
I want to say they just re-aired that one.
But I'll get a residual. They probably did.
I think they just re-aired it a little while ago because my wife and I watched Killing Eve last month or whatever, like way after everybody else. And then we saw that and we were like, holy shit, that's a girl from Killing Eve. So then we watched that. So you left there, blah, 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 whatever. You did a thing with Stephanie Wilder Taylor, who, if I am correct, still has a parenting podcast with Adam Carolla's wife, Lynette.
Lynette, that's right.
She was on, and you wrote for, maybe you were the head writer?
Of that show, I was the creator, executive producer.
And the show was very bizarre in its inception. Can you explain what it was and what channel it was on?
Yeah, well, that's the channel is what made it weird. Mm-hmm. It was on a kids' network, Nickelodeon, but it was an adults-only show. So the humor was PG-13. I wanted it to be R, but I couldn't. But it was a show for moms. A comedy show, sort of to give them a break from parenting.
Right. So and this would air at 8 o'clock in the morning?
Well, that was the problem. It was supposed to air at night.
After the kids went to bed.
Exactly. But the problem is these ignorant parents would sit there with their 4-year-olds, which they shouldn't have done because it was for adults. And then Stephanie would make some joke about using a vibrator. Then these right-wing zealots would write Viacom and go, we want Nickelodeon taken off the air. My 4-year-old was just irreparably damaged by hearing Stephanie Wilder do a vibrator joke.
So was that show part of Nick at Night?
They called it Nick Mom, which was this horrific idea that they were going to have programming for moms.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that show didn't last long?
Did not.
You still on good terms with Stephanie?
Love Stephanie, yes.
Awesome. The story of that show cracks me up because I don't feel like there should have been that show on that network. I just don't feel like that was a good fit for that network.
It was a complete mismatch. You got a former SNL writer, cynical.
You got a guy who's used to writing for an audience at midnight.
Correct. And Stephanie, she's fearless and loves doing stuff on the edge.
And ballsy.
And then you're showing this to moms all around the country with little kids. Yeah, it was a crazy idea.
That's insane. But my favorite odd thing that you have done, you're currently doing, I think. Do you write on the Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart show?
I did write on. I did 2 seasons. I think the show's dead.
Oh, you think why?
I think so. Too expensive.
The way I was gonna say it was you wrote on a show with a convicted felon and an admitted pimp and drug dealer, and that's not the same person.
Exactly. That's a good one.
How did you just get onto that show because you were like, this is fucking amazing?
I met with the executive producer, creator of it, Sally Ann Salsano, who did Jersey Shore.
Okay.
And she's a character. She's a lovely, funny woman.
Well, she's genius if she came up with Jersey Shore.
Yeah, she is. She is genius. So she hired me, and I did it for 2 seasons, and yeah, what a trip that show is.
So did he really smoke weed on set?
All the time.
And did she really drink on set?
Yes.
That's
Sometimes
amazing.
she was a little tipsy, for sure.
And they're friends.
They're friends.
Like, even before, the show happened because they're friends.
Correct.
And they would compete in sort of...
Well, Martha didn't try to be funny, even though she's funny sort of without even...
I really meant cooking.
Yeah. It was like less a competition show and more of a talk show, I would say.
That's amazing.
The most disturbing segment of that was that rapper Rick Ross came on. He was drunk, Martha was drunk, and he was like blatantly hitting on her on camera. I remember going, there's going to be an assault here. It's got to stop.
Yum.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
It was gross.
But everything ended fine, right? Hey, she's a felon. She'll shank that dude.
Exactly.
Now, I know that I've kept you for a long time, but there's a very pressing matter I want to talk about. I saved it till the end because I'm sure you don't want to talk about it. You've been Me Too. No, I'm just kidding. You'd be like, what? I'm just finding out right now?
What?
No, I want to talk about teaching sketch writing. You do that. Talk about what you do and why you do it.
Great. This is my promo part of the show. I do it because during the pandemic, I was bored. I thought, how can I use my skills? And there's so many people around the country who've asked me, God, we'd kill to have someone like you share your wisdom on TV sketch writing. So I started doing it, started my own website, hughfink.com. And now I'm branching into wanting to do, instead of 5-week classes, just hour-long workshops in how to write a monologue, how to write for late-night TV. And I'm launching those next month or two. All on Zoom, so people from all over the country can take the class.
And all of this information is available at hughfink.com.
Hughfink.com.
The reason that you did it is because you were getting all of these questions, like, how do you do this?
Correct. I thought, okay, well, there's money to be made, and I'll enjoy it. I like teaching. I'm good at it. I think the students love how I make it a multi-dimensional class where I take sketches that I either wrote or know of well, and I show them the sketches, or we look at the script and analyze it and deconstruct it. So it's very hands-on learning that you're never going to get from someone else.
I love that.
I actually had some Austin students in my last class.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. And these are pretty intimate classes, right?
They're intimate. Now, the workshops will be less so,
Right.
but the workshops will be less expensive, too.
And not 5 weeks.
Correct. Just 1 hour.
Oh, very.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, go to hughfink.com and sign up.
That is fantastic. Where can people find you on the internet?
hughfink.com.
Hugh Fink on Twitter?
Oh, when you said the internet.
I apologize.
You meant on social media.
I did mean on social media.
You know, they can find me there, but I'm mute.
Okay, well, that's cool. Now that COVID, well, here in Texas, we're supposed to be 100% open or whatever, and slowly that's going to be happening around the country. Do you have any tour dates planned for comedy
I do not.
shows?
You know, my stand-up career is very on the if come. When I'm available to do it, when someone wants me, I do it. So this is thrilling to get to come to San Antonio and do a gig.
But generally, you're too busy writing on
and
shows.
producing, that's correct.
Okay. Is there any show that you're about to be writing on that you can tell us about?
Nothing I can tell you about now other than to say, you know, always in my wheelhouse of coming up with ideas and collaborating with funny people. But I hope to be launching some stuff.
Also,
soon.
sometimes you talk to Stephen Krueger.
Stephen Krueger's a guy I'd love to do a show with.
Well, I just meant like you talk to funny people and Stephen Krueger.
We're now slamming Stephen Krueger. We're
Sure.
circle here.
Yeah.
He's gotten too much airtime.
A little bit.
Please cut this.
Real quick, like I said, there's a couple of sketches that just stand out that are from around when you were there. I wish there was a directory where we could know who wrote what.
That'd be cool.
It would be amazing,
Yeah.
and there isn't one, and it's so hard to find. I mean, you can go to the internet and say, who wrote the More Cowbell sketch, and it'll tell you. Somebody, Donald.
Well, actually, Will wrote that.
Will wrote that
He
sketch?
did, yeah.
No shit.
If you're a cast member, you still have to officially have a writer help you with it.
Okay.
But Will wrote that sketch.
And I heard that it was brought up like 4 or 5
Several
times. And everybody
it didn't
just
do
kept
well.
getting shot down. But the baby birding, the bird family, where they chew up the food and spit it into each other's mouths.
Yes, I was there for that.
You were there for that.
Yes.
I know, because Will Ferrell was in that sketch.
Yes.
Now, what was the reaction, I want to say at the table read or whatever, when
Here's
that
the
got
truth
brought up? Because that's
about that one,
disgusting.
Stephen. I was at the table read only, and I was disgusted. But then I wasn't at the show because I flew to Vegas. Lauren had me producing the ESPY Awards for ESPN.
Okay.
So I was in Vegas doing the ESPYs. So I was not at SNL the night of that show.
Oh, thank God.
Exactly. I was not a fan.
Because there's no way that they actually spit food into each other's mouths
no,
during the rehearsal.
During the rehearsal? That I don't know. Don't know about that.
And I think it was Juliana Margulies.
She's a trooper.
She must be, because that, even pre-COVID, we were just like, that is the most disgusting thing we've ever seen. It was so terrible.
Yes, you're right.
All right. Now, as we're heading out, first of all, again, thank you so much for meeting with me
pleasure.
and for giving me all this time. You are a comedy legend, sir. I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything that we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about today?
No, thank you for bringing up the classes at HughFink.com. That's great. I'm good.
I think it's a really cool thing that you're doing because, as far as I know, that doesn't exist.
Not for someone on my level. It'd be masterclass with Judd Apatow. So, that's the whole other level of celebrities doing it where you're going to pay a lot more.
Right.
But I think there's no one at my level doing it.
I don't think that there is either. Mm-hmm. You can take, how to be a stand-up classes over in LA or whatever, but
they're not taught by people.
Yeah, they're not taught by anybody you've ever heard of. But I don't think that, like you said, that there's a comedy sketch writing of your caliber. So I think that's really cool that you're doing that.
Thank you.
And with that, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day.
You're a great interviewer, by the way. I've done a lot of these. You're exceptional.
Thank you so much.
Are we done?
We are done.
Would you like to get lunch?
I would love to get lunch.
Let's do it.
Hey, Streetwalkers, it's time for a giveaway. Thanks to our generous friends at Sylvania, we're going to give away some Bluetooth speakers. What do you think? These are fairly special and limited Fascination Street podcast edition, as they have a little Fascination Street emblem on the end. This oblong Bluetooth speaker is about 8 inches tall and about 3 inches in diameter, and is IPX4 waterproof. So how do you win? Well, what I need all of you to do is post a short video to your Instagram story, your Facebook story, or even your TikTok, telling everybody why you love Fascination Street Podcast and which is your favorite episode. Make sure to tag the show in these videos, and each week I'll pick one winner to win one of these special limited edition Sylvania Bluetooth speakers, and I'll mail it to you. And I might even throw a couple of other Fascination Street pod swag in there as well. So tell a friend, tell all your friends, and include it in your stories on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. And don't forget to tag the show, Fascination Street Podcast. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.